Get connected, Fitchburg. Sign up for Fitchburg Connect, the city's monthly e-newsletter that keeps you informed about all the events, services, and updates that matter to you. Get it in your inbox once a month. Sign up today to get Fitchburg Connect.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Call to order this meeting of Fitchburg Board of Public Works for Monday, April 20th, 2026, held here in the Francis Huntley Cooper Council Chambers. We have a full quorum tonight. Don is here, Alder Jetzer, myself, Dave Wilborn, and Kim Lobdell. So thank you for attending. Public appearances for non-agenda items. We do not have any, so that takes us to item 3, Alpha, approval of the April 6th meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I so move we approve April 6, 2026 meeting.
Moved by Dave Wilborn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Questions, corrections, additions?
None.
None? All right. I didn't have any either. Then we'll call the vote. All in favor of the approval of the April 6th meeting minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes are approved. Next, it takes us to agenda item 4. Report of the Director of Public Works, Mr. Tim Volker, PE.
Good evening. Just a couple administrative updates for tonight. At the next Board of Public Works meeting on May 4th, 2026, Eric Dundee from the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District will be giving a presentation about the current work going on at the district. So look for that on the upcoming agenda for that meeting. And then next, I just wanted to show everyone a GIS-based interactive map for road closures. So the engineers in Public Works have been working with our GIS specialist, and if you go to our homepage and GIS, kind of scroll down to the bottom of the city's website to GIS maps, you click on that, and then there's a web-based application for road closures. And what that is, it'll show you all the road closures going on currently in the city. So right now we just have, if we zoom into Fitch-Rona Road and McKee Road, and you can click on the data, and it'll kind of tell you, a description of the road closure, what direction, lane impacts, when it starts and when it ends. And Dakota's also working on, when we have a road closure go out, to have Apple Maps and Google Maps automatically update that. Okay. So if someone from out of town comes into town, they know it'll automatically reroute them based on those detours. We don't have that up and running yet, but we hope to soon.
That's a nice feature. We Fitch-Rona there, a lot of neighbors are griping. It says closed. Why they thought they had to drive up there when the road says closed.
Yeah, and I know we've had some issues with people moving the signs. Yeah. I know KL Engineering's been out there on a daily basis helping with the sign management. And
all right, thank you. That's a nice update. I'll have to mention that. Alder Jetzer can put it in his Alder blog. That'd be a good thing to put in there, right? Yeah.
And then next up, just with a couple maintenance activities, our prescribed burns. Heartland has completed all the spring burns, and they will be coming back in the fall to burn the medians in Terra Vesa. And then Field and Stream has one prescribed burn left in Harlan Hills East Pond, and they'll complete that in the next couple weeks as weather allows. We're hoping to have that pond also completed, but the wet weather last week kind of set us back. And then lastly, for maintenance updates, just the spring hydrant flushing started last week, Monday, April 13th, and that's going to continue through Friday, May 15th, 2026. And then just kind of a note with the spring hydrant flushing that the water may appear temporarily discolored at times, and the discolored water is typically rusty brown or a yellowish tint, and that's due to the sediment and mineral deposits being stirred up as part of the flushing process. So the discoloration's harmless, and what we suggest is just running the water for a few minutes to get it to go away. If it persists, don't hesitate to give us a call, and utilities can come out and take a look. Sometimes we'll have an issue in between the meter and the main, which is upstream of the meter, and we'll have to come out and kind of flush that for the residents. So a couple times every cycle that we do this in spring and fall, we'll have several residents that we'll have to do that for. And then next up, just some project updates. Our 2026 street resurfacing project. We have our public information meeting this Thursday, April 23rd, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. in the council chambers. And then Zach, who's our project engineer for that project and is managing it, has reached out to Payne and Dolan. They're the contractor for that, and they're looking to start late May, early June on that project. And then our 2026 sidewalk replacement project was advertised on Friday, April 10th, 2026. And we're looking to open bids next week, Thursday, April 30th. Next up's our Basswood Drive project. That's to the west of Sub-Zero, where we're turning Basswood Drive into a cul-de-sac. We kind of ran into a little, some bedrock on that roadway last fall. So we had issues with the utilities getting those in prior to starting that project. So we're looking to restart that project first week of May. So you'll be seeing a road closure for that coming up. Then next up's our 2026 Belmar and Tower Hill Utility Improvement Project. The construction contract for that project is on tonight's agenda, and that's for Speedway Sand and Gravel. And Speedway would look to start that project in mid-May. And then lastly, our Tower D, the contractor, they haven't given us an exact date yet, but they are looking to start the painting of the water tower here shortly. So once I have a date, I can let everyone know. With that, does anyone have any questions?
Did it pass the pressure test?
It did pass the pressure test.
Okay. Board, questions for Tim?
Yeah, so for the road closures, are we sending out notifications via Notify Me consistently on those?
So we do send out an email. What we do is we enter the data in GIS. GIS will spit out an email to emergency services, school districts, news outlets for that. As far as the Notify Me, I'm not quite sure on if that also gets...
I know I've gotten notifications in the past,
Notify Me?
But I don't know
Okay.
whether they are consistent.
So the council, we also have common council on that email. So all the alders and the mayor would be getting the email about the road closure. But I don't believe the Notify Me, I'd have to check to see if that also goes out with this new application. But I can report back on if that is.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Tim. Just want to make sure I didn't have any other ones. And I asked Tim before, but, well, I'll wait till we get to that agenda item. All right, so next we have questions or review of the bills and checks. Does anyone have any questions? I have some, but I'll wait till the end. Go ahead, Bill.
I noticed there were 14 Cintas purchases, 13 of which are attached to PO 3481, and the other one is not attached to a PO. Is that correct?
They all should be attached to the PO. Which one was not?
2/9/2026, the $41.39 in between the other three on page 4 of our packet.
And that might have just been missed. It did get charged. I'm thinking it just didn't get, the PO number just didn't get put on this transaction report. But I can double check that. I'm pretty sure it got charged to the PO.
Anyone else? I had two then on page 4 of 6. Date 3/26, check 130-384, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, BA number 1, construction and engineering stormwater. What is the BA number 1? I should know that.
That should be for budget amendment number 1.
Oh, okay, all right. Sounds good. And then the other one, just a general question, the last one on that page, 130-433, Targi Houston Company for stormwater facility maintenance. What project was it, or what work were they doing?
That was for our pond dredging project that we did over winter.
It's Quarry Hill and Upland Tech?
Correct.
Thank you. I should have known that. Okay. All right, give me a minute to move back up to the agenda here. All right. So now our agenda items. The first one we have ordinance 2026-0-11, amending purchase and public works contracts processes by amending Chapter 10 of Sections 10.309, 10.311, 10.43, subsection A, and Fitchburg Code of Ordinances. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Moved by Alder Jetzer. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kim Lobdell. These are mostly due to the governor changes, changing amounts. And I'm going to turn this over to Misty to give us the rundown on it.
Sure. So you get me 2 meetings in a row. Ideally, I would have done these at the same time, but Governor Evers signed this into law the Friday before our last meeting, and we didn't have time to change it in the packet. And I didn't feel comfortable taking this one because it does pretty strongly impact public construction without having you guys see it first. So that's why I did it as kind of a separate one, just so that you guys can make sure you saw it. So what this is doing is for public construction purchases in particular, there are now 2 categories of public construction. One is for highway projects and one is for general public construction. Those that are highway projects are the same as what they have been. There's no changes to those. So a notification in the paper is required at $5,000 and public bids are required at $25,000. But for those general public works, public construction projects, so non-highway ones, those thresholds are increasing to $10,000 and $50,000 respectively. And then because those changes are happening for public construction, we're also proposing for non-public construction that we increase when bids or RFPs are required from $25,000 to $50,000 to be consistent with those non-highway public construction purchases.
Can you give us some examples of recent, what would be a non-highway construction project, even the non-public and the public, the 2 different ones you just said?
Absolutely. So highway would be the highway projects, right? So a good current example for the public construction that is not highway would be the police facility that's under construction currently. So it's not a highway, but it's still public construction. So facilities, parks, water mains, all of those types of things are still
Tower
public
D.
construction. Yeah, still public construction, but not highway. And then the non-public construction would be basically everything else the city does. So the CINTAS bills that you were just talking about is non-public construction. Also, engineering associated with kind of a public construction project is not public construction itself. It's just the actual construction that is considered public construction.
Questions for Misty? When would this take place? After council approval?
The day after publication, so probably the week following council action. As far as the statute is concerned, that was effective the Sunday before your last Board of Public Works meeting, but now we need to get our ordinances aligned.
Okay.
Do you expect this to be a large number of projects between the 25 and the 50, or is it not very big?
For public construction, I'll let Tim answer that, but in my experience, there's not a lot of things that fall in that 25 to 50,000 range exactly.
Yeah, I don't foresee a lot of projects, but there'll be a couple that, you know, wouldn't meet the old threshold, but now meets the new where we wouldn't have to go out. But most of our projects are over 50,000. There's not many that fall under that.
And I'll say just because public bids or RFPs aren't required, there's still a requirement at 10,000 and above that quotes get obtained, because we do want to make sure still that a good value is being received, a good price is received. So it's just a less formal solicitation process.
I suppose if you're not exactly sure what the bid is going to be, if it's at all close, you could err on the side of putting it out for construction or putting it out for bid or RFP, and then letting the chips fall where they may.
Absolutely.
Now, you had said highway construction is highway construction, but what is highway construction? So, for instance, if we were to, you know, stripe bicycle lanes on a piece of road, and that's all we're doing, is that highway? Is it not highway? If we're putting in, you know, if we were to put in a BRT station along Fish Hatchery Road, is that highway or not? Park paths, multi-use paths, you know, transportation corridors, but not for cars.
So I'll say public construction itself is not defined in the statute, so it's only kind of through case law that we've gotten there. This definition of highway public construction is brand new with this act, so I'm looking through these materials to see if they defined that anywhere, and I don't see it easily, but I guess from a practical perspective, Tim might have a better answer on that.
And I was looking this up earlier today and got distracted. But yeah, public highway it's not just highway, it is the local roads that the municipality oversees. So when most people hear highway, they're like, oh, 55 miles or higher, but it is local roads. The striping's a good, something we would need to look into on, you know, the bikes. I'm trying to pull it up right now as I'm talking.
I mean, there's a clause in here, 60.47(1)AG, that says highway means a public way or thoroughfare, including any bridges on the public way or thoroughfare. So kick the can down the road for, you know, that's the definition of a highway. So what is a public way or thoroughfare?
And then the one right after that does define what public highway construction means. So it's involving construction, improvement, repair, or maintenance of a highway. So there is some definition, that's an improvement.
Right.
But I think still a lot of it's going to be left to city engineer judgment.
I don't want us to get into trouble for
Agreed.
not following the rules just
Right.
because the rules aren't clear.
Any other questions on this? Thanks staff for being very expedient on you know, happened pretty quickly and you were ready to get these updated, so I appreciate that diligence. Any other further questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor of approving ordinance 2026-0-11, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Misty. Next, we have Resolution R9426, acceptance of 2026 Belmar and Tower Hill Utility improvement bid. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve R 9426.
Moved by Don. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kim. So we've talked about this a little bit. We have upsizing of stormwater. We have hydrant work, 2 locations, and this is a large project, 2.3 to 2.4 million that's been awarded to Speedway. And just wanted to add, we talked to Tim, there was one street that was taken out, Aztec, and the determination, Tracy, they looked at it, they haven't had problems with that water main, relatively short street, so they think they have plenty of life left in that one, so they're not going to replace that. So Tim, what else would you like to add on this?
Just a couple notes with the funding. So that the stormwater on Crescent, that's going to $315,000 is going to be covered by a grant, and that was the Tammy Baldwin money that the city received back in 2022. It was about $800,000. So out of that $800,000, we'd look to utilize $315,000 on this project, and then the remaining funding from that would be used on our Schumann Stormwater Improvement Project, which is also upcoming this year. So you'll see that in the next month or two come forward before the board. And then as Alder Herbst mentioned, just Aztec getting taken out, there is a budget amendment with this agenda item to redirect funding from the water utility fund of $93,000 from the main oversize and service installation project to this project. And that was to cover the shortfall. And then we also took out Aztec just due to that not having enough money.
Questions for Tim?
So what kind of shape is the water main in on Aztec? I mean, when do we think we have to do that?
All the water main on this project, both in Tower Hill and Belmar, was constructed back in the 60s, anywhere from like 1966 to 1968. And out of all the streets, Aztec was probably the one street that had the least amount of breaks. I believe it was only 2 or 3. So we feel comfortable, Tracy feels comfortable, for it to last the next 30 years until we were to come back and resurface the road again.
Okay, I was going to ask too about the age, because I did look this up and I saw the same date ranges as you for just, housing construction in the late 60s. So, I mean, these water mains are less than 60 years old now. That seems like a pretty short life for a water main. What back then? What do we think they projected the lifespan to be?
So these are cast iron pipes, and they're not ductile iron. Ductile lasts probably a good 100 years. Mm-hmm. So we're not getting the full life expectancy of a ductile iron pipe since they're cast.
Okay.
Bill, I would add, I don't think we had the QA/QC on the install of those.
Everything gets better over time, hopefully.
Well, hopefully.
A lot of when we go in and make a repair up in this area, it's because of the bedding of the trench, and there was stones or rocks in there, and it's been sitting on that, and over time it wears the pipe and eventually cracks it. So.
And some of those too were depth issues too. A lot of the breaks we've had over the years, we weren't at a sufficient depth to keep it above the frost also. Tim, I was looking at the bids. Maybe this is common. The mobilization charge was that's their business, I guess. It was twice as much as the other one.
Parisi's?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that? I guess that's their business. That one kind of jumped out at me that bringing bigger trucks. Yeah. We've used Speedway, a lot of projects. They're a common vendor for the city. What I would ask, you can impress on them, that had a lot of complaints the last time with our streets that things weren't restored, and one particular resident, kids are going to fall into holes, and I got a little tired of it, but you can impress on them that you need to take care of it. Keep things, remove debris. I realize it's a process. They might be subcontracting out part of it, but they're the GC. It's their responsibility.
And one thing with this too, the street resurfacing will be completed by a separate contractor. Okay. So Speedway's going to come in, go work in the Belmar neighborhood first, because the ARPA project that we had last year, we didn't get this project out in time to get it done before our paving deadline. So we pushed this off to this year, and then Payne and Dolan will pave the streets after. Okay. And then Payne and Dolan also has our 2026 street resurfacing. So after Tower Hill's done, they would also repave those streets after Speedway gets done installing the underground. Okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the explanation. And what, if I'd say, we talked about the grant, $315,000 grant. What is the funding source for the rest of the project?
So the funding source for the rest of the project, the seventh whereas clause kind of shows the different funding sources. So we have stormwater. Yep. The city's going to be picking up about, I think, about $78,000 in stormwater. Okay. And then the remaining would be paid by water, which is the 602 funds. And then that very last 604, which is the 37,000 in whereas clause 7 in the resolution, where it says $37,735.95 in parentheses. That fund should actually be 602. So that's an error I noticed just before the meeting. So we'll have to change that in the whereas clause.
Okay. I would just offer amendment to change the whereas in 7, the last one, from 604 to 602. For that as
is that a friendly amendment, or do we need to go through?
No, that's a friendly amendment. I just want to make sure it's documented. All right. I've got it noted, Tim. All right. So the largest portion is being paid by water?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, which it should be. All right. Any questions on this one?
I have one more.
Go ahead, Bill.
There's almost 7,000 feet of 8-inch water main, and there's like 111 feet of 6-inch. I'm curious what's going on there.
Yeah, most of the water main in the city is 8-inch pipe, and then the 6-inch may be, just kind of might be a hydrant branch or something like that. So that's why there's not as much.
The only thing kind of funky outside of the mold cost was the abandoning existing water main. There's like a $50,000 difference. Item 48. Is that what should be the right number there? What's a typical
for abandoning?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lump sum price. So when Tracy and Chelsea reviewed the engineer's estimate and the bids that came in,
estimate? Maybe.
What was that?
What was the engineer estimate for abandonment?
On the abandonment?
Yeah.
Which order of magnitude?
I think it's part of the adjustment for the high mobilization cost in Parisi's.
Well, I'm sure
they put some of their abandoning in the mobilization so they could get their money early. I'm guessing it's closer to the $50,000, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think $5,000 is actually low for abandoning
Okay.
the existing mains.
Depends how good your backhoe operator is, but even
Right.
if he's good, taking the backhoe there is $5,000. Okay.
I had a question about the mandatory alternate for the tower. I didn't really understand that portion of it.
So that was,
Why was it a mandatory alternative?
and that's a good question. Right, you would just include it in the
Yeah.
bid. I think they wanted it for sure to get a price for that, and then depending on that price, then the city would determine whether or not to do it.
Requiring them to bid it so you
Right,
could
like
evaluate.
they had to, in order to bid on the project, they had to provide a price for that, to do that work.
By mandatory? What work is it? What is it included
So,
that they were,
That was
maybe wouldn't have done if it was too much or whatever?
That was the bulk fill station, so that's going off our water tower on the west side of the city, so we don't have to hook up a hydrant meter for contractors to utilize, so that kind of saves our maintenance staff from breaking away to install hydrant meters throughout the city, taking them down. The contractor just basically gets a code, goes out to the fill station and can fill their trucks.
How big of a tank is it? Are we planning?
It's not a tank. It's just piping and
Oh, okay.
valving that they can open
Okay.
it and close
All right.
and fill their trucks accordingly.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
And we currently have one off Lacey Road on the east side of the city.
Okay. So do we back bill them for the water charge?
Yeah, they
then?
would be charged whatever water usage they utilize.
Thank you. Anything else? You're a big project, there's scrutiny. Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R 9426, acceptance of 2026 Belmar and Tower Hill utility improvement bid, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have Resolution R 9326, authorizing acceptance of the police storage building re-roof and gutter replacement bid. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval?
Moved by Alder Jetser. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave Wellborn. So it was determined that our roof after inspection on that was inadequate. We can't have a leaking roof on stored evidence. And looks like we had a spec written, and the bid for replacement of this came in at $68,000. It's a membrane roof. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. So the existing roof would actually remain on the building, and they put 1.5 inches of insulation, and then the EPDM material above that. One of the benefits, obviously, is you don't have to open up the roof and expose the evidence that's being stored inside the building.
Just writing here. Questions for Tim?
Yeah, so, well, it was a little goofy in the packet there. Some things were listed with a quantity of 1, but the unit price differed from the extended price. But I did see there was a drawing in there that had the dimensions of the roof. So you can see it's 112 feet long and 64 feet wide. I was wondering about the membrane. This is a pitched roof. I'm not used to seeing a membrane roof on anything other than a flat roof. What drives the choice to use a membrane rather than putting another metal roof on there?
I think just because of it's a ridged roof too, that we had to work around that. So the insulation's actually getting notched out. There's a detail on the drawing. where it shows.
What page are you looking at?
It would be page 87 of the packet.
Okay.
Kind of, you can see the little notch here on the insulation.
1 second.
So the current roof has the metal ribs, and then the insulation would be notched over that, and then the membrane on top.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Any other questions on this?
Tim, I apologize if it was in here, I might have missed it. Does this structure go away once we have the new facility built?
No.
No, it remains.
Yeah.
Have you used this roofing contractor previously?
Yeah, the city has, in the pre-approval, showed that it was still, or a previous vendor. Since I've been here, I haven't utilized them, but sometime previously the city has utilized them as a vendor. And they provided references and worked for UW-Madison, some other cities. They're from Wheaton, Illinois.
I saw that. Does anybody call up on their references?
Yes,
just
we
to follow up on
call
them?
up and verify what the reference is.
So this membrane is 60 mils thick, it's unbacked. I'm just wondering if we had this roof in place and we had the baseball size hail, what would have happened to this roof? I mean, can this withstand a decent amount of abuse from golf ball size hail and larger?
I believe so. You know, the city does, I think, have membrane roofs. Kind of on our old, I think it's old City Hall, potentially. I know Kevin was up there back in October repairing it, but it's also, 30 plus years old.
Okay.
So.
My sense, Bill, like, compared to asphalt, well, the asphalt, the rocks get knocked out, metal gets dented. I think this has probably more ability to
More flexibility.
absorb it and come back to the right shape. Any other questions on this? I would just add, Don, asked the question, will we still keep this with the police station? It's a big building, when we have, say if a car has been, say there's a homicide and the car was involved and they end up having to store cars in there, and it's a lot of space, far more than we're allocating for evidence storage, in our new building.
And typically for large items.
It's large items, yeah.
So in the PD facility, I think they've got the shelves that can all move, so you can turn the little ship wheel and move it. So it's mainly for smaller stuff.
Okay. I just didn't know they all had to be enclosed, but.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one? None, okay, we'll call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R9326, authorizes acceptance of police storage building re-roof and gutter, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we have Resolution R7526, granting an underground easement, electric easement on the 9574 Lacey Road Water Tower D to MG&E. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, R7526.
Moved by Don, do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
Second by Ken Lobdell. So as we know, we have large pumps in these facilities and they need electricity typically, so an easement to bring the underground cable in is required, and looking at the detail, looks like they have good detail of the boundaries of that requested easement. Anything else you want to add on that?
The electric would be coming from the east from Terra Vesta, so it would actually be the distribution coming to our water tower, passing the Osborne property, and the cost is about $100,000 for this.
How long is the, didn't look that long, that lateral to it.
I don't know the length off the top of my head.
Okay. Does that include, so that's just, 100,000 is the cost for them to put the cable in the ground, set a transformer, a metering pedestal,
And to install it from TerraVest.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Thought you meant it was $100,000 for the easement.
No, I
was
was-
like,
No,
holy
no,
cow.
no, that's
I bit my lip quick.
installation of the actual service and
Yeah,
the lines to get it to the service.
yeah. And they did, MG does all that engineering, you tell them what your peak load
Correct.
is, and they
Yep.
engineer size of the cable and the transformer, and
Do they have a schedule when they're planning to do this?
I don't believe we have the schedule yet.
I just remember on some of them, we had a hard time getting on their
Yeah.
list to get things done in a timely manner.
And I think once they get the easement, then we would execute an agreement, and then once that agreement's executed is when they put us on the schedule.
Bill?
Yeah, a couple of things. I guess, first of all, when we say it's an underground easement, the actual verbiage in there says that distribution of electrical current and MG&E's communication signals upon, under, across, and through the following described land located in Dane County, Wisconsin. So when we say underground, is that just to differentiate between a regular easement, to say that you can also go underground? Because when you hear the phrase underground, you assume there's not going to be anything on the surface. But I was envisioning that this section might be like a gravel driveway or something, but if they put something across there, that might not be possible.
Yeah, I think it leaves MG&E the flexibility to install even maybe potentially in the future something above ground. So that's why there's that language in there, even though the title says underground. The specific purpose we're utilizing it for is underground, but at the same time in the future, if MG&E or the city needed something else done above ground, we don't have to go back and modify any language. It's already in there.
Well, I'd add in subdivision improvement agreements and things like that, have it right in there that any electric circuit that's less than 14,400 volts that's phased to ground has to be put in underground. That if it's existing, but new, we have that. It's in our ordinances that the new stuff has to go in underground if it's their standard. The high voltage that they have for distribution it's 24,900. That's a phase-to-phase voltage, and the phase-to-ground on a grounded system like that is 14,400. So we have that in our ordinance, so that distribution lines, that put in to serve have to be underground.
Okay.
They have overhead. We can't compel them to
Right.
to put it underground, but.
And then one kind of a typographical thing, the address listed in the resolution is 5974. That's supposed to be 4974. The first whereas clause and the first resolve clause.
Page down. You have such a keen eye.
93, page 93 of our packet.
Okay.
Yeah. And the title of the resolution.
Yeah. So you're saying it should be 49?
Yeah, one of the drawings in there shows that it was 4974, and I noticed the difference, so I looked it up, and 4974 is that part of the city. 5974 is closer to Lacey Seminole intersection.
Okay. Tim, can you get those changes
Yeah,
made on
we
there
can get
before
that
it comes to
cleaned up.
council? Okay. Thank you, Bill. That's a good catch. All right, anything else on this? The last, I'm just trying to think, the last one we had something similar. It wasn't the water main, but the Hostahochi, we had to give MG&E an easement, for that. That's the last one that I recall that coming coming before this board. Okay, if there's no other further questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R7526, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Next, 6 Echo, Resolution R8426, releasing a public utility easement on Outlot 40 in Terra Vesa. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve Resolution R84-26.
Moved by Kim, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. This appears to be a easement that is in a road right-of-way that we would not need it to put utilities in.
Correct. This utility easement is not needed since it is in the Lacey Road right-of-way. It looks like it just got recorded as part of the plat for Phase 5 and wasn't noticed, so we unfortunately have to go through the paperwork of unrecording it.
Okay. How do you discover this? Who comes across this?
So someone discovered it, and
Okay.
We're not the only utility, so MG&E and all the other utilities too are going to have to unrecord the easement.
All right. Bill?
And it looks like we're giving up the easement that is basically the width of what will be Lacey Road, or it currently is, whatever the case may be. But does it not extend on either end of that? And if so, are we keeping those easements?
So yes, the public utility easements will still remain on the private lots, which will be 6 feet width, and that'll be in all directions. So it'll go on both sides as you head north on Lacey Road, and then when you head east and west on Parsonett Drive, the 6 foot would still remain.
Good question, Bill. Thank you for asking. Anything else on this? Okay. Call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R8426, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, 6 Foxtrot, Resolution R8826, approving contract amendment 3 for Fitch Rona Engineering Services Agreement.
I so move to approve Resolution R-88-26.
Moved by Dave Wellborn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. As we read through, a lot of this has to do with changes with the easements and the redesign of the roundabout for paths.
Yes, there was the property acquisition challenges that we've had on this project. So we've had the design changes to remove the paths around the roundabout, and then also some additional meetings with the utilities for coordination, additional project meetings, and then also phasing the project since we're into 2026 already and still have to bid this project. We're looking to phase it. Phase 1 would be from Nesbitt Road south to Quarry Vista Drive in 2026. Then in 2027, look to continue that Quarry Vista Drive south to Tonto.
Some of this cost is the cost of breaking it into
breaking it up, breaking the bid up. And then also we included the final monumentation that needs to be completed after the road's constructed.
Are you going to try to leave that pretty much usable, the road, as it's being redesigned there?
During construction?
Yeah.
It'll be closed for the public, but through traffic would be allowed to get through, and then emergency vehicles also.
That includes school buses?
I was going to say.
Yeah, the school buses we will coordinate, but most likely it will be during, summer would be construction, and then Ross has been coordinating with the school district on that.
Okay.
So once we have the final schedule from the contractor, we'll be reaching back out to the school district to coordinate if there is a closure that would impact, during school.
Thank you.
So this is the third amendment, to our engineering contract.
When do you expect this project to be bid?
We would like to get it advertised this month, and then bids open in May, and then looking to award in June.
Is this a little late in the season to be getting good prices?
We'll see. And then, that's something we would obviously evaluate.
I think contractors have known that it's been coming up for quite a long time, so you should be okay, but you never know.
Breaking it up too helps.
Yeah.
That it's not so much in one season for them, that, hey, and that first portion, phase one, is kind of a small portion that they could get done this year, and then obviously then have the work next year to keep them busy with the roundabout and everything south of there.
So even with the bridge abutments and everything, it's still a small project?
Yeah, the bridge abutments will be a challenge, but you don't have the roundabout going in.
This is the third amendment. You don't have a crystal ball. It's good, this is 10. This is another 10% adder. We all understand why it's coming. There's other things out there, and I guess it's not a fair question to even ask. If you knew about them, you would have included them already. Anything else, Don?
This is all in Fitchburg, in this city, right? None of this is in the town?
Well, the town,
They have to share.
right now, the roadway's divided down the center line of the road. So when we award the construction contract, there'll also be the inspection services contract, and then also a intergovernmental agreement with the town on a cost share with the construction. So the city and town did receive a $2.7 million grant for this project. So there's that, and then the town will be contributing an amount towards construction.
Are they contributing towards these amendments?
That's part of our negotiation. They did contribute the original design, and then the amendments, I believe, we're having discussions with them right now as part of the construction.
They don't want to spend anything. They want a nice road and don't want to spend anything. All right. Any other questions on it? We slowly creeping forward on this project. It's been. I'm confident I will see it completed in my lifetime, God willing. Okay.
At least from Towner Trail North.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Kim. All right.
Is anybody having buyer's remorse about going for a roundabout instead of a signalized intersection there?
The roundabout geometrically fits. Obviously, it's been difficult with the land acquisition, but just the area, you have the Nesbitt roundabout to the north, you have the Seminole Lacey that we just constructed within the last 2 years so maintenance-wise, we don't have the signals to operate and maintain in perpetuity. The roundabout's a lot easier.
Bill, I don't know if you remember it, the roundabout at Nesbitt and Fitch-Rona, prior to that, it was a four-way stop and traffic would back up so far, and now even at busy times, you move through there pretty well.
And one thing I'd kind of give you guys a little heads up. So as part of the CIP process, what we're looking at doing, we had the resurfacing of Fitch-Rona south of Tonto, or I believe it was around Wayland, and we're looking to change that from extending that all the way to County Highway M, and then resurfacing that all the way north to Tonto. So the segment in the middle is town of Verona. So we've talked to them about timing that in 2027, and then basically have Fitch-Rona shut down in 2027 from County Highway M North to, it would be Quarry Vista Drive. And then all that would be resurfaced, which is about, 3 miles worth of roads from Nesbitt to County Highway M.
Maybe improving the shoulders at the same time.
Yeah, we did put in,
There is no shoulder.
we did put in widening it, the narrow section, so that's something included in the CIP. I'll try to mention that as, once that plan comes forward before the board.
So how much of that, you talked about sections and the town having a section in the middle. So rather than everything to the east of the center line, Fitchburg, and to the west is town of Roanoke, talk a little more about how that works out and how the town, if you have any feeling as to their appetite for funding this project.
Yeah, so funding it, they would pay for the milling and resurfacing of that middle portion, and then, that's something that, as far as the agreement, is trying to figure out an easier way of just down the center line. Maybe they take the rural sections of road under ownership, and we'll take the urban. Maybe that's a possibility we could look into. So that's all to be determined. But yeah, the center line is just a difficult, even plowing is, the guys are out in the field, hey, if it's not done, we typically just go ahead and do it, and vice versa. So I think that would ease up plow operations too, if it was more just segments. But that's something we're working through.
That road's virtually undrivable. I think we'd be much better off just with a gravel road there. It'd be smoother. All right. Anything else? Thanks for that update on that CIP item, Tim. All right, then we'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 8826 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. The next Board of Public Works is Monday, May 4th at 5:30. I just want to say this is my last meeting as chair. I've been chair for the last 6 years, and it's time to someone else, so we're turning it over to Mr. Jetzer to be chair of Board of Public Works starting at the next meeting. So it's been an honor to serve as chair. No one, Dave and I have been on this a long time. This is the longest tenure. I don't know why they let me be chair for 6 years, but it's time to pass the mantle on to someone that is, as you've all demonstrated, is very well prepared and asks good questions. And I will continue to be on the board as a council member, but this will be my last as chair. So
We'll just switch seats.
that's what we'll do. Yeah. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Moved by Don, second by Kim. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 6:28. Thank you.